Hello, everyone. Gwendolyn Wallace, pronouns she, her, is a multidisciplinary humanities scholar and award-winning children's book author from Connecticut. Her work is animated by transnational and decolonial traditions within Black feminist studies. Gwendolyn holds a BA in the History of Science and Medicine from Yale University and an MA in Public History from the University College London. Before starting her PhD at MIT in Science and Technology Studies, Gwendolyn worked as the inaugural fellow at the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. She also serves on the board of the Reproductive Equity, Access, and Choice REACH Fund of Connecticut. Gwendolyn can usually be found gardening, biking, or exploring used bookstores. Please help me welcome Ms. Gwendolyn Wallace.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Gwendolyn Wallace. I'm a children's picture book author and PhD student, and it really feels incredible to be speaking here on the last day of this amazing summit. I'm going to try and keep this talk to 25-30 minutes and then have some time for a Q&A after, especially for these amazing girls here if you have any questions for me or anyone else. But I want to start by just saying what an honor it is for all of us to have the time and space here to gather and celebrate the power and legacy and future of Black women and girls. For my young Black girls in the room, if there's one thing you take away from spaces like this, I hope it's that you truly have so many people rooting for you. You won't always see us, and some of us are no longer here, but you always have a cheering squad of Black women across space and time wishing the absolute best for you. I want to start my talk with a little bit of honesty. First, with the honesty that I've written this speech for the Black girls and teens in this room, because I'm not too far from your age, and I want to share some reflections on my teens from my mid-20s. Second, I want to be honest that I've spent the last few weeks absolutely agonizing over the speech. And I struggled to write it, because I remember what it was like to be a Black girl and then a Black teen. And I remembered all the speeches I had to sit through, telling me that I'm special and that I'd change the world and to keep reaching for my dreams. And I remember how empty and vague all those platitudes felt, and how far away the speaker's comments always were from my worries and the struggles I was having. As a teen, I struggled a lot with my self-esteem, and I remember getting so much advice from adults in my life who loved me, and thinking to myself, well, that doesn't apply to me, because I'm somehow worse and more broken than they were, or in ways that they can't possibly understand. Because being a teenager is hard. It's so hard. And I don't think young Black girls get enough credit just for showing up. And I spent a lot of my time as a teen feeling angry and sad and ugly, and all I wanted was for someone to tell me that those are valid things to feel. So I've been spending the last few weeks thinking really hard about the bits of advice that did get through my teenage self-loathing. And what all those tips had in common was they were coming from someone who committed to being real and specific with me. Real about their struggles, about their doubts, about what it took to get them where they are. The call for this conference was to share my ideas about my vision for building a world where girls are celebrated and empowered. But I wanted to stay a little bit more personal for my keynote. We can't build movements if we as individuals aren't whole and well. And that's the journey that the people we look up to don't often share. When I write picture books, the first audience for them is little me. And so seeing my books on the shelves honestly feels like putting a little bit of young Gwendolyn's heart into the world. I'm not always so lucky to speak in venues where I feel like it's worth it to share the more emotional parts of my road to being an author, but I'd like to do that here with you if that's okay. I want to make that commitment to you all to be real and to share some real moments of growth in my life, because you deserve that. And I hope that something sticks with you from Black girl to Black girl. Now with that out of the way, a little bit more about me. I'm 26 years old, and I was raised in Connecticut. I am in the second year of my PhD at MIT in their History, Anthropology, and Science and Technology Studies program. I'm interested in studying race and how it has influenced the development of science and technology, as well as how Black people make, understand, and exchange scientific and technological thought. Right now, I've been very interested in histories of the environment and extraction, but I'm open to my interests changing, and they do change every day. I'm also on the board of the Reach Fund of Connecticut, a reproductive equity organization. I'm on an adult gymnastics team, and I'm a gardener on a break right now because I don't have any gardening space in my apartment in Boston. But the role in my life that I'm proudest of is my career as a children's book author. I've written 3 picture books that are out on shelves right now. Joy Takes Root, which came out in 2023, The Light She Feels Inside, which also came out in 2023, and Dancing with Water, which actually just came out a few short weeks ago. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And today I'm mostly going to discuss The Light She Feels Inside because it was the first book I wrote, but I'm happy to talk more about my other books or my writing process in the Q&A. All of my picture books have Black main characters. The first 2 have Black girl main characters, and my most recent one has a Black non-binary main character. And while I write for all children, I especially write for Black children. And it is an immense privilege to write for Black children, especially in a world that wants to hide our histories from us. Now that I've given you kind of the big overview, my big CV, I want to pause for a moment. Because I remember being in middle school and high school and having to listen to so many talks from awe-inspiring people, but still feeling like a future like theirs was out of my reach because no one really explained how they did it. There are people who know what they want to do from a young age and chase that dream until they're at the top of their field, but those people are the minority, and that's not my story. I always say that the year I wrote my first picture book changed my life, and I want to share the details of that here with more openness than I usually do, because I learned a really hard lesson that year that changed my life about how to define my own success. In 2019, when I was a junior in college, I decided to leave Yale for a semester to study abroad. I was supposed to be on a multi-country trip studying community health and social change, living in India for 1 month, South Africa for 1 month, and Brazil for 1 month. Instead, as you may have guessed, COVID swept the globe, and we were sent home after just 1.5 weeks into our time in Cape Town, South Africa. A couple of days after I arrived at my parents' house, back in my childhood bedroom, I became extremely ill and eventually tested positive for COVID because my doctor special ordered a test for me. Those days where I was in the midst of an acute COVID infection are mostly a blur to me. I had a sky-high fever and was in and out of consciousness, pretty much just waking up to try to eat food or drink the Gatorades my parents left outside my door. I stayed in bed for the better part of a week, as even walking across the house made my lungs burn. I tried to sleep sitting up because laying down gave me a piercing headache. I lost my sense of taste and smell for a month, for my sense of only salt, like saltiness, to come back a few months later. And while those acute symptoms eventually went away, I never really got better, and I still deal with a lot of consequences from my first COVID infection today. But in April 2020, sitting sick in my childhood bedroom, I was faced with a kind of stillness I had never let myself feel in my life. I had always been the kind of person who kept myself busy with school. I worked really hard, I got good grades, and that's important, but I was also lucky to have a brain that really worked for the structure of school. I knew I should get good grades and participate in as many extracurricular activities as possible, and for a long time that was my only definition of success. But in 2020, I sat in my childhood bedroom with no schoolwork to do, no extracurriculars to run off to, no friends to hang out with, and no energy to walk or read. And I was faced with an indefinite number of days in front of me to create a life I wanted to live. And I was horrified. Because I had never really paused and considered what I actually liked to do, my values, or why I did the things I did. Up until that point, my life had just been a long road of doing the things I felt like I should do. Because my parents thought so, or society thought so, or my teachers at school thought so. But in my bedroom, I was surrounded by my old childhood picture books, and I kept flashing back to the fall semester when I helped teach in a kindergarten classroom as part of an early childhood education course. At a time when I struggled to think of anything I enjoyed doing, I remembered how much fun I had in that kindergarten classroom. Showing kids how to make a rainbow, explaining how tomatoes grow, and interrupting arguments to remind 5-year-olds that anyone can wear a baseball cap regardless of their gender. One moment in particular lived close to my heart during that time. I remember this one morning in the classroom when two girls came up to me and invited me to the playroom to see their restaurant. They pulled out a chair for me, handed me a menu, which was just a blank sheet of paper with some scribbles, because we were working on spelling. And then they brought out my requested food, which took the form of small containers filled with different colored beads. After I pretended to gleefully shovel the beads into my mouth, I thanked the chefs for their work, and I asked for the bill. The two girls looked puzzled and asked if they could discuss the answer to my question. They walked a few steps away, had a whispered conversation, and then returned to the side of my chair, telling me, "It's free. Food shouldn't cost." And this moment struck me, because it reminded me that kids aren't just sponges. As adults, we write off children and teens and their ideas and their emotions far too easily, when they have the best imaginations to think of solutions to our problems and are creating responses to our world in their play. These two 5-year-old girls had probably never been to a restaurant where food was free, but they thought about the unfairness of that and created a little space of freedom in their classroom. And how wonderful is that? It was this moment that actually inspired my first picture book, The Light She Feels Inside, as I sat with the heaviness of spring 2020 and tried to heal from COVID. Like many people during this time, I was glued to my phone, watching the news of police violence against Black people and the global protests against it. I cannot even describe to you how angry I was during this period. Angry that I couldn't live my old life, that I didn't recognize my body, that I had to watch on repeat as people justified why people who looked like me were worthless. But I kept flashing back to that moment in the kindergarten restaurant where I was informed that my food was free. Because what I saw in that moment in spring 2020, amongst the violence and the pain, was also some of the most beautiful acts of love I've ever seen in my life. I saw people all over the world, especially youth, and especially young Black women, imagining a world without incarceration, without borders, without state violence, without schools focused on punishment. I saw some of the most beautiful art and music and speeches and posters of my entire life through the screen. And I felt people's anger, but I also felt their deep love for themselves, their friends, their communities, that fueled them to fight for what they deserve. And I see that beautiful mix of anger and love in this room. In The Light She Feels Inside, I follow a Black girl named Maya who feels so weighed down by these big feelings inside of her. But she learns to lean on her community and Black women past and present to use those feelings to make change. I wrote it because I didn't see any books that reflected those feelings back at me and validated my anger rather than trying to change it. And I share the mental and physical health struggles that led to this book, not to make you sad, but to subvert a lot of the expectations I had as a student about the people who make change. My picture books did not come from a period of certainty and working 10 years toward a goal or even a plan. The Light She Feels Inside found a home on bookshelves because my screen time was so high during COVID that I eventually found a tweet from a picture book author asking for manuscripts by any Black unagented writers. I'm so proud of myself for sending her that email not knowing if it would turn into anything. I wasn't even sure the manuscript was good, but I sent it to her because it reflected my values, and I wanted to take a chance on myself for the first time in my life on something that didn't fit into my grand plan. I've spent the last few years committing to a practice of taking chances on myself, applying to things where I don't fit all the requirements, sending my work to contests, emailing important people out of the blue, DMing celebrities on Instagram saying, "Hi, do you want a copy of my book to review? I think you'd like it." I get a lot of rejections and non-answers, but sometimes things work out, and I get opportunities beyond my wildest dreams. There's something that feels really, really freeing about constantly shooting a lot of uncertain shots. I spent my teenage years feeling so much pressure to be the best, feeling so much shame that I had no clue that I wanted to do with my life, and feeling so insecure looking around at everyone who was better than me at the things I wanted to do. But in the end, it was this strict definition of success that blocked me from listening to my body, which told me about the things and the people I loved and the things that made me angry. The more we enjoy the world and ourselves and the people in it, the more endurance we have for our fight. One of the Black women from the past that Maya meets in my book is Audre Lorde, an amazing Black queer woman, activist, poet, and philosopher from New York City who passed away from breast cancer in 1992. All of her writing is beautiful, but there's one quote of hers that encompasses the lesson I learned during spring 2020. In 1988, she wrote, "Our battle is to define survival in ways that are acceptable and nourishing to us, meaning with substance and style. Substance, our work, style, true to ourselves." As Black girls and women, people have so many opinions about how we should live our life. We will all be so many things to so many different people. But if there's one thing Black girls and women also have, it's style. And as I agonized over this speech, I eventually came to the realization that what I wish someone had told me as a teen before 2020 was that I needed to start finding a way of defining survival and success that are nourishing to me outside of others' opinions, and that I was capable of doing so and listening to my body, even when I didn't like what I saw in the mirror very much. This defining and redefining is a lifelong process, but I certainly wish I'd started earlier. The best piece of advice I ever got about finding my style of survival came from a college professor of mine senior year who told me and a friend over lunch that we should follow our nudges. Nudges are those moments when the world whispers to you. When for some reason something says, maybe I should take that class, or maybe I should talk to that person, or maybe I should sign up for that trip, or maybe I should take the long way home today. The more you lean into these nudges, the more life surprises you and gives you moments where you feel nourished and whole and in your body. And slowly you can find a way to the life you're supposed to be living, even if things don't make sense to you at the time. It was a nudge that told me to take that early childhood education class that didn't fulfill any of my academic requirements. And without it, I wouldn't have written my first book. With the time I have left, I want to give you 3 examples of the way I define success for myself now, which are also many of the threads that run through my writing. The first for me is being intentional and giving in my friendships. I have 3 best friends, 2 from high school and 1 from college. And one thing people close to me know is that I'd do anything for them. In my sophomore year of college, I made a pact with my best friend Mira that we could both get 4.0 GPAs both semesters. We would be like robots, we told each other in the bathroom, academic weapons. And so we missed friends' birthday parties and long dinners laughing in the dining hall and 8 hours of sleep and club meetings to wake up early on Saturday and study. And we both got 4.0 GPAs both semesters, and we felt horrible. We were numb and exhausted, and we were not the best friends to the people we cared about that year. As a matter of fact, I got in a pretty bad fight with one of my closest friends because she felt so alone during that time. Mira and I were successful by one metric, but not in the ways that were acceptable and nourishing to us. And I don't think of those semesters as the times at Yale when I was doing my best. As an adult, my friends have saved my life time and time again, and I have saved theirs. In my senior year, one of my childhood friends passed away, and I let her sleep in my bed and spent 2 days staying up, comforting her. It meant missing a presentation and hurting one of my grades for that semester, but it was so worth it. Now, even in my busiest times, I prioritize my friends, making time to see them, working on handmade gifts for their birthdays, and apologizing to them when I make a mistake. Life is really hard, and we can't go through it alone. So being there for your friends is always worth it. And I found that they've given me so much energy, encouragement, and inspiration. A couple of weeks ago, I had a launch event for my 3rd book, and it wasn't my social media followers, the people who gave me awards who were in the front row. It was my friends with bouquets of flowers. My second definition of success, now in my mid-20s, is working with people, not against people. Being in school and getting grades for individual work really hammers into us this idea that things are done alone. And I remember looking around at my classmates and feeling so jealous of everyone who was better than me at something. Especially as a teen, I felt like I was in this giant competition with everyone who was my age. And then the shocking thing about being an adult is that everything worth something is done with a team of people who are good at a lot of different things. Making a picture book takes a team of at least a dozen people, even though there's only 1 or 2 names on the cover. Everyone is capable of making something beautiful, but you don't need to be good at everything. Now, I try to spend time noticing what I'm good at, but also noticing what my friends and enemies are good at, and encouraging them. Because someone who is good at something different from you makes a great teammate. The world changes because of people who put their skills together to make an idea come to life, and you are never too young for that. 2 of my best friends recently started an online magazine. One is an amazingly talented visual artist who is super skilled with social media and public speaking, but is not the most organized person. And the other is a little shy, but a super talented writer and editor who reads a ton. Together, they made an Instagram account and a website, asked me and all their other friends to write pieces, and now they have a magazine. If you met someone new during the course of this summit who was really good at something, try giving them a little compliment and maybe share an idea you have. You never know what will take off. My last idea of success in this era of my life, and maybe my most important, is following the rhythms and habits of my body. I spent a lot of time trying to fit myself into the boxes of what a good writer does. I used to think that to be a good writer, I had to write every day, get up early in the morning, and read all the classics. But all of those things don't feel very good in my body. And instead of fighting my natural rhythms, I've learned to accept them. I will never be a morning person, and I need a lot of sleep. So I sleep in and I schedule my meetings in the afternoon, and I write at night when I feel most inspired. If you can only write using a special type of pen at 3:35 p.m. and sucking on a blue Jolly Rancher, then buy a big bag of Jolly Ranchers and make that your routine. As Black women, people will want you to apologize for a lot. But once you figure out what works for you, do it, and don't apologize for it. These are just some of the values that I'm holding near and dear to me these days. Yours might be different, but it's important to take time to think about what they are. If you know what motivates you and what success means to you, then those moments where you're struggling are not destabilizing, because you're centered and grounded and remember yourself. Picture books are the medium that help me remember my values, but yours might be totally different. It has been such a hard few years to be in the world, and I am so proud of you, all of you, for continuing to strive and do your best and get up every morning, and you all deserve a round of applause for that alone. I really hope that I can be a resource for all of you going forward. If you type my name on Google and go to my website, you'll find my email. Another commitment I have to myself is to respond to every student who sends me an email. So if you want to say hi, or need some words of advice, or have an idea that you want to come to life, please send me an email. Don't be a stranger. I don't think we can afford to be strangers to each other. I want to end here on Audre Lorde's words because they have been such a guiding light for me. Here's a section from her diaries. I want to live the rest of my life, however long or short, with as much sweetness as I can decently manage, loving all the people I love and doing as much as I can of the work I still have to do. I knew if I lived, I could live well. I knew that if the life spark kept burning, there would be fuel. If I could want to live, I would always find a way, and find a way that was best for me. I hope this summit has helped you get one step closer to the life you want to live, and the world you want us all to live in. Girls, know that all of us in this room are rooting for each and every one of you. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts in the Youth Share Out next session, and I'm confident that the world is in very good hands with you all. Thank you so much, and please, we have a little bit of time for a Q&A, so please feel free to ask any questions you have about my life, being an author, being creative. Don't be shy. Thank you all so much.
Turned on. Okay, any questions for Gwendolyn? Coming your way.
Hi, my name is Kalana. So my question is, what's your writing process look like?
Ooh, my writing process, it changes, and it's constant reflection. I think for me, I've learned that I need to read in order to write. That if I can't, sit down and make a strict writing schedule for myself if I'm not reading and watching movies and listening to music and taking in all of the inspiration from the world. And so I think I've learned that part of my writing process needs to be pushing myself to experience new things, just as it needs to be disciplining myself to like sitting at my desk and writing. I tend to get a lot of my inspiration at night, and so something I started doing in the Notes app of my iPhone, I have a note that I call Compost, which is just all of those like silly little ideas I come up with at night. It could be a line, a word, something I see on the street, and I just type it into Compost. And the reason I call it that is because I think, right now it's just an idea, but I think that if you let it sit, it kind of grows into something really beautiful. And so I think a big part of my writing process now is just keeping track of all my ideas and looking back at them a lot and saying, maybe now is the time in my life I can do something with that.
It's an amazing question. Thank you.
It's a great question.
Hello. Thank you for sharing all you shared. I just have a question, I guess, about your newest book you said you wrote. I'm a proud head of a very non-binary household, and my kiddo, who's also a writer in college right now, and has a great writing practice himself. Anyway, just wondering, you said that your latest book, the main character is a non-binary Black character. I'm just wondering kind of what brought you to want to write a children's book with a character like that?
Yeah, a great question, one of my favorites to talk about. I mean, I think I'm a queer Black woman, and that's a really important part of my identity, and something I've always wanted to center, and something I try to center in all of my picture books. But I wrote this book especially after my little sibling, who's 6 years younger than me, came out as non-binary to our family. And they were only 15 when they did that, and I was really struck by how, they didn't have any representation in books or TV, and especially for a book about water, a book about the environment, about fluidity and trusting your body and trusting yourself. I thought that the perfect character for that would be a non-binary character. And I think for me, a big way to explore gender and just my identity with my body has been through the environment, has been learning to garden, has been spending time outdoors. And I really wanted to reflect that in a book, because I think that that's true of a lot of Black queer history.
I love that, Gwendolyn. Be the change we want to see.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I want to thank you for reminding us to give acknowledgement for girls showing up, because I think that is so important, and me as a person, I tend to forget that showing up is half of the battle.
Absolutely.
I had a question for you, Gwendolyn. So, if I made a 4.0 at Yale, my parents would have a billboard with my face on it. One of my godfather's favorite stories to tell people about me is that I got a 4.0 at Harvard in law school. I didn't go to Harvard, Gwendolyn. I didn't go there, and I did not have a 4.0. So he lies to people often just to show you how important that would be. So just for advice for educators and for parents, how do you shore up this tenacity and this fortitude to allow our girls to be as creative and exuberant, but also to build what has to be a very amazing work ethic at the same time?
I think, okay, this is a really, really good question, and I credit my mom with this a lot, who is one of 12 from North Carolina, one of the fiercest Black women I know. And I think she really encouraged me to have a creative childhood, to go after what I wanted, but also to finish things and to see a project through. And I think one attitude that I've carried with me throughout my life that she definitely gave me is a kind of how hard can it be attitude. That, if something broke in the house, we weren't calling somebody. She was like, where's my duct tape? Where's my toolbox? I know how to fix this. And I feel like that attitude of like just being resourceful, whatever we have, we can do something with, has carried me so far, both academically and in my creative life. But I think it was that combination of exploring new things, but also sticking to them and finishing them and making goals. Which is, I think, why I always like to emphasize, the most important thing, the thing that has made me successful was not getting the 4.0 GPA, but learning how to keep myself centered and whole and happy and a good friend and a good community member while keeping up that success. And that's the hardest balance.
Other questions? I'm going to come here, and then I'm coming across to you.
I was just wondering, do you have any essential media recommendations or things that really inspired you, just in general, but also Gwen's Girls, we work a lot with elementary schoolers and middle schoolers, so if there's a book besides your own that you think that all 5th graders should read or all 7th graders should read, I would love to hear what that might be.
Okay, I think really, I have so many recommendations. I love to read and watch media and listen to music. I think one that would be particularly topical for this group is a new picture book inspired by a spoken word poem that's called Can We Give the Police Department to Grandmothers? That is written by a Black person and imagines what would happen if the police department was run by Black grandmothers and all the amazing things that would happen in our communities. And I think it is such an amazing book about imagination, about community power, about listening to our elders, and about building systems of care, not punishment and incarceration. So I would recommend that. I think it's an amazing picture book, and I'm happy to talk after because I have a long list. I recently, for my friends' new magazine, they had me make a list of 15 picture books to start a radically imaginative bookshelf for kids, and so I have that list for you, and I'm happy to talk after.
Very ignorantly, I have a question. I hear you use the term picture book and not children's book. Is there a difference?
Also a good question. I think I tend to emphasize picture book because I see it as a collaboration. I wrote the words, but I work with amazing illustrators who are also doing some heavy, most of the heavy lifting, to be honest, in the book. And so I think that the pictures and the illustrations are just such an important medium for the books. But I think that there are children's books without pictures. I would consider those early chapter books still children's books. I would consider middle grade books children's books. And so I try to be specific that I write picture books. I write books that are illustrated because it's a collaboration with some amazing, incredible artists who deserve all of the praise and credit.
Thank you so much for being here. Your voice is just beautiful for Black girls, and I appreciate listening to young Black women talk to Black girls. I think intergenerational mentorship is critical in our community, and so to have you here telling your story about how to not be perfect but be yourself is amazing, so thank you. So I would be remiss if I did not ask, what is your focus in your PhD program?
Yes, also a great question. I literally flew here after class yesterday. This is my first week of school, so that is top of mind right now. But my undergrad degree was in the history of science, and my PhD program is interdisciplinary. So it is a joint degree between history, anthropology, and STS, which is science and technology studies. And so my particular focus is on race, gender, and science. I like to think about historically how the invention of race intertwined with the invention of a lot of our scientific disciplines, and how that impacts healthcare today, the way we think about our bodies today, the way we tell stories about science and especially our environment today. At the end of my third year, I have to propose a dissertation project, and so right now I feel like I'm gathering all of my important interests to put together something that's really interesting to me. But something that was mentioned in my bio that I didn't talk about in my speech was that I also really have a passion for public history. I do not want to be the kind of academic who writes a book for the 8 other people in my field. And it's important for me to continually work with museums, work with schools, to take my research and make it something that people can actually learn from. And so I worked at the International African American Museum in Charleston, and right now I have a curatorial assistantship with the Museum of African American History in Boston, which is the biggest African American history museum in New England. And so I'm constantly working on exhibits. Thank you. And so I'm working on exhibits and programming there for the community about health and science and how to be well and what that has meant for Black people throughout history.
Last question for Gwendolyn. Now you're gonna have to meet me halfway. You see I got these heels on.
You can project.
No, it's being recorded, so just use the mic.
I'll listen to Dr. Kathy. She cuts my check. I just read a children's book on ideals, and you were talking about the ideals that you have, you store them away. What would you say to somebody who has a great idea but never allows that ideal to come to fruition?
That is such a hard question. I think in many ways it's the question. And I think it's the question I try to address whenever I speak with young students and kids, because I think the hardest part of your work, especially creative work, especially about having an idea, is sharing it, is getting to the point where you believe it is worthy to share with other people. And it's one of those things that the more I think my advice would be to think of it as a practice rather than a moment. That sharing your work and your ideas and what's going on inside your brain is something you have to practice. It is a muscle you have to use, and it gets less scary the more you do it. And I think, I was able to publish The Light She Feels Inside because I really just sent an email to this editor on Twitter with no conception of what it's like to be a picture book author or how that works. And that has changed the course of my life. And so I think that, especially as Black girls, as Black women, you're told not to take that step until you're sure. And you meet all of the requirements and you're overqualified for that thing. But life is actually a lot more beautiful when you are constantly shooting your shot at things that you only have half the requirements for, that you're not totally sure about. That might be a reach, that might be a dream. And you get rejected a lot. And you have to get used to that and take it as redirection rather than a shutting down. But I think it's so hard. I think start with people you trust. Share it with a friend, a parent. You don't need to poster something all over the walls first thing. But start with the people you trust. Start with the people who love you. I still, will have my friends from high school and college edit my essays. I sent one of my friends this speech a couple days ago. And so again, my friends are really my biggest supporters, my biggest editors, and they're the ones who see the first step of my work. It's scary, and it never stops being scary. And you have to do it scared. That would be my advice. Do it scared. Be scared, and that's okay, and do it anyway.
Do it scared.
Do it scared.
That's a word from Gwendolyn. Please give it up for her.